it was hard for me to not pick The Dark Knight. I mean, come on, Heath Ledger's performance. But that's literally would be the reason why I picked it, and not so much of like an emotional attachment. It was just the fact that he literally just destroyed that character. You can't say anything wrong about that movie in general. And then I was thinking Tropic Thunder was one of my all-time favorite comedies. I just like that movie, but I was like, it's still not. And then I kept looking, and I was like, you know what? It has to be this. Like, without this movie, you wouldn't have countless of other movies. You wouldn't have like this huge payoff that happened this year. So I mean, you're going back to 2008. Whenever you really think about it, the Avengers series really kind of started with Iron Man. And also the original Iron Man movie, I think, is probably one of my all-time favorite standalone movies from that. I thought they did such a good job of doing the backstory of Tony Stark. And like he had mentioned earlier, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is hands down one of the greatest actors to character. Like, you can't really think of anyone else doing that. So I mean, yeah, 2008 was a no-brainer. Like, it was the year that started so much. So
yeah, it was hard for me not to pick The Dark Knight too. I do believe The Dark Knight was the best movie of that year in terms of like well made and crafted, but it wasn't the movie that I watched the most that year. And there's a movie that I actually went back to the theater and saw twice. Now, before I name it, a couple honorable mentions: The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. I really enjoyed the movie Quarantine, which was a remake from the Spanish horror film Wreck. Sex Drive and Zack and Mary Make a Porno. Those were two funny comedies that year. And the best comedy that year, Step Brothers.
yeah.
But there was a movie I went and saw, and based on the previews, I almost didn't go see it, because I thought the previews didn't show anything. I was like, eh. But then when I was reading what the movie's supposed to be about, I'm like, I'll give it a try. Saw it at the theaters by myself, was blown away, called my brother, because I knew he would like it, and I said, hey, tomorrow I'm going to go back and see this movie again. You want to go with me? He's like, yeah. Went, took him, he loved it. And that movie was Cloverfield. Cloverfield, to me, blew me away. It's one of my favorite creature features and like creature sort of alien invasion films about these people that are having a party because the one friend is leaving to go teach in Japan. An explosion happens. They all rush out to the streets of New York to see what's going on. The head of the Statue of Liberty floats down the street, and from then on it's total terror as somehow this giant alien creature has been awoken from under the water, almost in like a Godzilla style fashion, and is terrorizing the city of New York. And it even has these spider-like creatures that live on it and jump off of it and are very deadly in their own right. And you've got these group of friends that are trying to survive the night in New York, and the government's also considering blowing up the city as well because they can't kill this creature. The effects were way better than I ever thought. The sound effects to that movie, the score, I mean, it was so much bigger than I think anyone could have anticipated that movie to be, and it demanded a second viewing in theaters for me. It also sparked such a huge following and fan base and theories of the creature and where it came from. It even developed the creators to make these websites online that you can go to that have a history of like companies surrounding the film that may have caused this to happen. And of course it spawned sequels, for better or worse. The second one's great. The third one I really did not like. But yeah, Cloverfield was my favorite movie to go back and watch that year. The Dark Knight, best movie of that year, but my favorite was Cloverfield.
I can see that. All right, so 2009 is another comedy for me, but there's two honorable mentions. One is a horror movie, and that is The Orphan. I couldn't not mention that just because of the impact the very first time like I saw it. I just love that movie. The other one that I want to bring up, because I do like action movies, but I also like martial arts kind of movies. And there's one that came out this year that I feel, or came out in 2009 that I think is one of the greatest. And it's not just a martial arts film, it's an amazing drama, just all around great movie. And that's the Ip Man movie, the very first entry to, I think there's 4 of them now. First 3 they're good, but the first one, it's a martial arts movie hidden inside of an amazing drama that takes place. Basically, the master that kind of taught Bruce Lee, it's basically his story, and it's during World War II, and it's over Japan trying to take over China, and like so you have that like kind of war drama aspect. You have the poverty of that time period as another dramatic, and him trying to open up a school, and like him trying to like show people how to be a good person, not just always going straight to violence, and how basically he is kind of forced into it in certain scenes. There's a fight scene that basically, it still to this day when I watch it gives me chills because of like how much power is behind it, and it's just an amazing movie. But the one that I did pick, like I said, is a comedy. It's one that I hold up in my top 5. It's another one that I recommended him to watch that he hasn't watched yet. But that is I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. It is by far, it's kind of like a guy's guy comedy movie. It's about this guy that basically is throwing his friend a bachelor party. He's a narcissistic prick that really only cares about himself, and it gets him in trouble, gets him kicked out of the wedding, and basically he has to figure out a way to get himself back into the wedding and everything. And the funny thing about it is it's actually based off of Tucker Max. It's based off of a book that he wrote that is actually an autobiographical book that's broken up into short stories about him. So it's basically a true story about how this guy is an asshole. One of his other the book I believe, it's been a while, I have read it. I believe it starts off with literally him saying I'm an asshole, and then it just kind of goes from there. But it has some of the most funniest scenes from the time that it opens all the way to the end. Like there's a scene with him running across a hotel room shitting himself. Like it's just the things that they do, some of the dialogue is just so it's incredible. So that's definitely got to be my pick.
Yeah, this for 2009, I'm going to take a lot of shit for this pick. I already know it in advance because I'm going to be the only one here. But so for 2009, you had some good movies. You had Paranormal Activity, you had Orphan, like he mentioned, Drag Me to Hell, probably the most underrated horror movie of the year, The Collector. You had District 9, you had a really good independent film called Moon with Sam Rockwell that I really loved. You had The Hangover that year, which was huge. You had Inglourious Bastards. The movie I almost picked, which is Zombieland, which was very close. But I picked the movie that I was most hyped for, and I don't care what anybody says. I really enjoyed this movie. I know it gets a lot of shit and it gets a bad rap, but I'm sorry. I really enjoy this movie, and it's one of my favorites in the series, and that is the Friday the 13th remake. I know most people hate this movie because they say how terrible a lot of the characters were, but I liked a lot of the characters. Yeah, there were some that were annoying, but they were meant to be annoying. Like the characters that were dicks were meant to be dicks, and they did their job. I love the opening. The opening's like a 15-20 minute opening that you don't realize is the opening. You think these are the main characters because you get to know them, and then they just get butchered in the introduction of Jason, and then you get the opening credits like 20 minutes in, and you're like, holy shit. And then you got Jared Padalecki in this from Supernatural, who's one of my favorite actors, and I love how Derek Myers played Jason in this movie. I think it's one of the best representations of Jason. I love the kills in this movie. I love the final act and the chase and how Jason has this underground lair. I'm sorry, I really love the remake. It's not my favorite in the whole series, but I really enjoyed it. And that year, that was the movie I was most excited to watch. I walked out of it really liking it. And when it came out, I rewatched it a few times. Then I go back every now and then and revisit it. I know a lot of you are probably going to leave comments, oh God, Friday the 13th remake sucks. But it was my favorite movie that year. I really enjoyed it, and I still do.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too, honestly. But alright, so 2010, quick little honorable mention for Dinner for Schmucks. I love it. It is kind of like a dry, like dark comedy to an extent, but I just think it's such a good movie. And then another honorable mention is Hot Tub Time Machine. Mm-hmm. When that movie came out and I saw the previews and I saw like what it was like about, I was like, this is gonna be the dumbest movie ever made. Like I had no hopes for it, and then I saw it, I was like, holy shit, this is one of the funniest movies ever made. Great. Like it's so good.
Great White Buffalo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's one that I quote a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's a, um, but the movie I did pick is going back into the sort of superhero realm, and that is Kick-Ass. That's the movie I watched the most. It's the movie I still go back to. I love it. Even the graphic novel it's based off of. I just thought they did a really good job at it. I mean, Hit Girl, you have Kick-Ass, you once again Nicolas Cage in it. Just such a good movie. So yeah, when looking at through all of them, I could have made an argument for Hot Tub Time Machine, but really when it boiled down to it, Kick-Ass was more for me.
So for 2010, mine is a film that ended up getting a little bit of a cult following and then eventually got a sequel, but it was not known at this time. It was actually a straight-to DVD film that year. But before I mention it, a couple honorable mentions. Inception was that year. Frozen, not the Disney movie. There's a horror movie called Frozen with these people trapped on a ski loft. It's actually one of my brother's all-time favorite movies.
My wife loves that movie. I don't.
Really? I enjoyed it. The Crazies, one of the best remakes ever. Honestly, way better than the original. Let Me In. You had Grown Ups that year. The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg. You had Insidious. But for me, there was a movie that I had no expectations in watching. I bought it at Walmart. It was a straight to DVD. I thought, what the hell? I'll check it out. When it came to an end, I was like, holy crap, how did this movie not come to theaters? This was so good. And that is Stakeland. Stakeland is one of my all-time favorite vampire movies. It's that good, and a lot of you probably haven't seen it. I highly recommend it. It's got such a great story, post-apocalyptic. Basically, a world gets taken over by vampires, but they're not just like vampires. They're more like zombie vampires. They're straight up monsters that don't talk. They just straight up attack and rip you to shreds. And there's this boy named Martin whose family gets killed, and he gets saved by this guy who goes by, they just call him Mister. And he's a badass, and he really doesn't have any care in the world other than killing vampires. He takes Martin along with him, kind of teaches him the ropes, and they go on this trek trying to find safety, trying to find people that are still alive. And along the way, not only are they fighting vampires, but there's also these like cults that are out there, these satanic cults that believe that that humans need to die. This is the end of the world, and these people are just as evil, if not worse, than the vampires. It is such a good, fun movie. The effects are awesome. It doesn't seem low budget at all. Acting's phenomenal, and it even spawned a sequel, Stakeland 2, which is very good as well. Not quite as good as Stakeland, but Stakeland blew me away in 2010. It became my favorite movie of that year. And like I said, if you've never watched it, check it out. It may become one of your favorite vampire movies.
I can see that. That is a solid movie. So, all right. So 2011 was really hard for me because there really wasn't anything that jumped out to me, honestly, at first. So the way that I did this is I kind of like thought of movies that like I knew were gonna go somewhere. I couldn't really remember when they came out, but I knew they had to go on the list. And one that popped up is the one that I did go with this year. Two quick honorable mentions was Sucker Punch, solely just for the visuals of that movie. They were incredible. And once again, it's kind of that over-the-top action, but they did such a good job, like visually, like just a stunning movie. The other one, a little controversial, but I found so much enjoyment out of it. It is just over-the-top, makes no sense, kind of a bad movie, but I loved it, and that is Hobo with a Shotgun. Just way over the top. But the movie I went with is called The Goon. If you've never heard of it, it's a hockey movie starring Sean William Scott, who basically he plays an enforcer. If you don't know what that is, he's the guy that like when your star player, someone's a little too rough, you put in your enforcer, and he basically is like, yo, you better stop doing that. If you don't, he's basically your big, just not the best player, not the most graceful, but he can basically fight. So that's the character that he plays, and he strives to be the greatest. It's kind of like a dark comedy, drama, sports movie. And I remember, like, I didn't see it when it came out, but I just remember, like, I came across it. I was like, I'll give it a shot. and fell in love with it. It did make a sequel, and I hold both of them like neck and neck. They're both solid movies. So.
Yeah, for me there wasn't a lot that jumped out in this year. I agree with you. Your Next was a pretty cool horror movie. The Fright Night remake, there were things I loved about it, but then there was a lot of things that pissed me off because the original is one of my favorite movies of all time. Moneyball, the Thing remake had its moments. Shark Night 3D, just because I like shark movies. Super 8, The Hangover 2, Scream 4, Take Me Home Tonight, very underrated comedy I like. The one I went with when I saw it pop up, I almost was hesitant to be honest about it because it is a chick flick, and I was like, am I going to make a chick flick my favorite movie of the year and be honest about it? And then eventually I went, you know what, I got to, because I watched it a handful of times and I laughed my ass off. My favorite movie, I have to say, of 2011 was Bridesmaids. And
Nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, it's just such a funny
it's borderline
movie.
chick flick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not your
It's an all chick
on,
cast,
like...
you know. But I'll tell you what, this movie's hilarious from start to finish. Amazing
Melissa
performances.
McCarthy's best. I mean,
yeah, I mean they all knock it out of the park. And when I saw it, I did not expect to laugh as hard as I did, and keep watching it, you know, numerous times throughout the year of 2011. So yeah, this wasn't a big standout year for movies for me, but Bridesmaids was not one I was hyped to watch. But after I watched it, man, I loved it. It's definitely up there in comedies as well. So for me, yeah, 2011, I'm going to say Bridesmaids, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah. All right, so 2012. All right, so right off the bat, I have to say Sinister, because once again, it's one of those horror movies that does not get enough. If you've never seen it, it's a movie that I highly, highly, highly recommend. The Amazing Spider-Man, I have to mention that because, I mean, Tom Holland, he does an amazing job, but I was a big fan of Andrew Garfield and this movie. I really didn't care for the second one that much, but this movie was one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made, in my opinion, so I had to at least bring that up. Another movie that I love, a lot of people hate it, and I think the reason that I love it is because it's so over the top, it's so historically inaccurate, but it's so fun. So I go into it just for the sheer craziness of it, and that's Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I love this movie. I don't know why, but I just love it's just a fun movie to watch. Like, it really is. You can't go into it expecting this to be like some amazing movie. You have to go into it knowing like what it is. It's just over the top, just now, when we're getting down to what I really picked, you would think it would be kind of obvious for me. The pick that I did pick is the obvious one for me, but there was one that was kind of fighting with it, and that's Wreck-It Ralph. Once again, I love animated movies, and this movie had so many little like pop culture, like innuendo type things and references and stuff that I just loved. And they were all like retro like things that I just loved. And I thought it was just an amazing like story all around. Once again, they built this world that made sense to like video games and just, but I couldn't pick it. I had to go with Avengers. I mean, Iron Man started it, and then Avengers. I mean, huge comic book fan, and like this was the movie that brought everything together and just blew me away. So I had to go with Avengers here.
Yeah, for 2012, I mean, you had The Dark Knight Rises, you had Prometheus, Ted. This isn't one of my favorite movies, but I have to mention it because it's my wife's all-time favorite movie. Is Pitch Perfect, so I had to mention that just because I know that's like her. You gotta mention that. But for me, it came down to two movies. One that I was very close to going with is The Cabin in the Woods. One of the most creative horror movies ever made. It's so much fun. It's not scary, but it's so much fun. But the one I went with is one he mentioned as an honorable mention. For me, it's Sinister. No-brainer, because Sinister, you know, especially even, you know, at the age I was in 2012, like, horror movies aren't scaring me anymore, you know, and I'm an adult, and I just see them for fun. But this movie gave me chills when I saw it in theaters. Like, the tension behind it. It's still one of the most underrated, like John said, horror movies of all time. I challenge anyone to watch this movie in the dark if you've never seen it by yourself and tell me it doesn't at least freak you out a little bit, especially the home movie scenes. An amazing concept for a villain, and just how the villain is portrayed and what he does and how sinister it is. an ending that you're not going to be ready for or expect. Great acting performances. This movie blew me away. Sinister, definitely I had to pick. Cabin in the Woods, it was close, but yeah, Sinister 2012 for sure.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so 2013. Once again, it wasn't a year that a lot popped out. One movie did pop out. I have one honorable mention, and that's The Conjuring. I love the Conjuring movies. All the spin-offs I'm not the biggest fan of, especially The Nun was horrible. The Annabelle spin-offs, they're decent,
Okay.
but when you really look at like that universe, the Conjuring movies, you can't say anything bad about. But the pick that I did go with is a remake, and I hold it as probably the best horror remake of all time, and that is the Evil Dead remake. The Evil Dead I hold like in high regard. So when I heard they were remaking it, I was a little like, first I was kind of pissed off, like, no, you can't do that. Because I'm not a big fan of remakes, reboot. Give me something original, and they kind of did. They didn't completely reboot it. They didn't completely remake it, but they did such a good job, and just the horror scenes in it, and like I just thought that they did such a good job at this remake that like I said, it's the greatest remake of all time in my opinion, in the horror genre at least.
Yeah, 2013 had some really good horror releases. Like John said, the Evil Dead remake, which was very close to being my pick. You had Insidious Chapter 2, which is just as good as the first one in my opinion. And you had The Conjuring. You even had a great horror comedy in This Is the End with Seth Rogen. But you would think, obviously, I'd go with a horror movie, but I didn't. This year there was one movie that was not a horror movie that I saw it in theaters and was captivated from start to finish. Couldn't wait for it to come out on DVD so I could rewatch it again. I even thought my wife, like when we went to see it, that it might be a movie that she wouldn't like, but she ended up loving it, which said a lot because she's usually not into these type of movies. My favorite movie of 2013 is The Wolf of Wall Street. I can go back and watch this movie over and over again. The performances in it from Leonardo DiCaprio, from Seth Rogen, from everyone in it. It is just such a fun, crazy story, and the fact that this actually happened, is just, it's so cool to see like the turn of events in this guy's life that goes from just a normal guy to just insane, out of this control wealthy, to his just downward spiral and downfall. The scene where Leonardo DiCaprio and not Seth Rogen, oh my goodness, I just dropped his name. Man, I'm having a lot of brain freezes tonight. But what's his name? The other dude from Superbad in the movie. I just said his name a moment ago, and now I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, when they do the Quaaludes, and they are like completely just out of their mind, and Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to walk and get in his car. Oh my goodness, just unbelievable. Jonah Hill. Jeez.
Yeah, Jonah Hill.
That's what I meant to say. I might have even said Seth Rogen when I first named the movie, but I meant to say Jonah Hill. That scene is just unbelievably acted. I love that movie from start to finish. So yeah, for me, 2013, The Wolf of Wall Street. Apologize for my brain freeze there again. Jeez.
Alright, so 2014 was actually a really hard one because there is an animated movie that I hold in high regards, there's an action movie that I hold in high regards, and there is a comedy that I hold in very high regards. So I was trying to figure out which one I could pick. So my first honorable mention, which might be a surprise to this guy because I bring this movie up all the time. I tell him that he has to watch it even if he just fast forwards over the scene with the dog, and that's John Wick. This movie, when you talk about action movies, this is one of the best. Even the first two. The third one was incredible. I'm not too sure about the ending of the third one. We'll see with the fourth one if they kind of make sense for me. But I mean, that John Wick, the first one, holy shit, like incredible. So the other one is another comedy, and that is A Million Ways to Die in the West. I don't know why. I love this movie. This is another top 5 comedies for me for whatever reason. Like, I just think it's hilarious. I just recently watched this again probably like a month ago and laughed just as much. And my wife was like, "You really think this is that funny?" I'm like, I don't know why. I might be the only person in the world that loves this movie as much as I do. But the one that I had to go with might be a surprise, and that is the Lego Movie. when this movie came out, I was like, how do you make a movie based on Legos? I watched it and I was floored, from the animation style to the story to the references to all the characters, everything. I thought it was incredible. And then you had like the story like with Will Ferrell as the dad and the little kid that wants to play with his Legos, and like I was floored by this movie. And I was like, you know what, like that has to be it. Like that movie, I can still watch that movie today and still enjoy it. So
2014 for me was the worst of the years. When I was going through this, I was like, man, there's nothing I really loved in 2014. Like, I was going through all the movies, and there were movies I liked. Like, I really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought that was a fun movie. Godzilla, I thought was a good movie. The Purge, Anarchy, As Above, So Below. Last Shift was a little known, low budget horror movie I bought. Neighbors, which I thought was a great comedy. But nothing really stood out. But then when I thought about it, there was one movie that I went to see by myself because my wife didn't want to see it, and I was pretty captivated throughout the whole movie. I really enjoyed the story of it. I got emotional during it, and then when it came out, I bought it and I rewatched it again a couple times, and it is a very highly critically acclaimed movie. It won awards. But that's not why I liked it. I just really was invested in the story, and that was American Sniper with Bradley Cooper. The story of Chris Kyle, the sniper that went on and did some of the most dangerous missions that we've ever had, and had to make a bunch of life or death decisions in terms of sniping terrorists and things like that. And this movie's just awesome. Like, it's so cool to see, like, this guy really did these things in these intense moments. Like, do you shoot somebody? Do you not? Like, it's all on the line, and like just the skill that it must have took to do the things he did. And then unfortunately the way he died, like with everything he's done for this country, and just the horrible, just unnecessary way that he died. I was really emotionally invested in this movie, so it was kind of a toss-up for me in this year. Like I said, there wasn't nothing that really stood out. Yeah. But I decided to go with it. Annabelle was probably like my most hyped movie that year. Like, I couldn't wait to see Annabelle because of The Conjuring, but it didn't turn out that good. So I had to go with American Sniper, because I can just remember being in the theater going, man, this is such a good movie, and then watching it again when it came out. But I could flip-flop with some of the different movies I named, but I decided to write down American Sniper. But like I said, this was the weakest of all the years for me.
yeah, that's like these next few years, honestly, it kind of just like, it was hard. Like, but for me, we'll just go 2015.
Yep.
It was kind of tricky for me. I did an honorable mention for Mad Max Fury Road, because once again, amazing action movie, yep. Amazingly shot, beautiful like cinematography, everything. Tom Hardy was amazing in it, and I mean, but the movie I did end up going with is going back into the superhero realm. I think this might be, outside of the first Iron Man and some of the ones that are like obvious, like the Dark Knight and stuff, Ant-Man is one of my all-time favorite like superhero movies. I thought they did such a good job, and whenever I heard they were doing Ant-Man, I was like, I don't know how they're really gonna pull this off. But let me tell you, the fight scene at the end of the first Ant-Man, whenever he's fighting Yellow Jacket on like the little toy train set, I thought was one of the best like choreographed fight scenes. It was ingenious, using the toys that look like they're giant, like normal sized things, because they're shrunk down. I thought was incredible, and Paul Rudd, I thought did an amazing job. So I mean, I had to go with Ant-Man for this year.
For 2015, you had a great comedy, Trainwreck, that I really liked with Amy Schumer. You had Mad Max, Jurassic World, Star Wars, The Force Awakens. That was definitely up there for me. It came down to two movies, though. One is Krampus. This movie I loved. So much fun with that movie. It really took me by surprise. But then, when I really thought of it, it had to be, my pick for 2015 had to be It Follows. It Follows didn't even play in a whole lot of theaters. Me and my wife went to see it. She did not want to see it at all, but by the time it was over, we were both blown away. And I think it's one of the most original, just creepy, fun horror movies to come out in the last 5 years. It's definitely up there. If I had to pick the best horror movies of the last 5 years, it's probably in my top 5. I love this movie from start to finish. The score alone is enough to give you chills. The story is so cool, and just like you wouldn't think hearing it that it'd be as good as it was, but it is. And I really hope that they could somehow find a way to make a sequel one day to it, because I think you could. But I really, really enjoyed It Follows. That was my favorite, not just horror movie of the year, but that became my favorite movie of the year in 2015.
I could definitely make an argument for that one too. All right, so 2016. I have a couple honorable mentions, and that is Don't Breathe, which whenever it came out, I was like, man, it was probably the most hyped movie of that year, as far as like a horror movie goes, and I was blown away by like some of the stuff that they did, the story, and like some of the things I tried to predict that I was completely off on.
Yeah.
The other one is going to be The Accountant. So that was another one that I was like, I don't know. Like Ben Affleck as like a hitman, I just really couldn't see. But then watching it's an amazing like action drama. The movie I went with, I had to go with, and that's Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I mean, you can't go wrong there. And this is a movie that I just watch over and over, and it's just they did such a good job. And I mean, other than basically, this is the movie that kind of opened up the R rating for a lot of horror movies, or not horror movies, sorry, superhero movies. It kind of said that you could really get away with making a solid movie with an R rating in the superhero universe. So,
yeah, 2016, Don't Breathe, definitely up there for me. 10 Cloverfield Lane, Star Wars Rogue One, The Conjuring 2, Bad Santa 2, The Shallows was definitely up there. But for me, same thing. It was kind of a no-brainer. I had to go with Deadpool. Went to see it with friends, and I just loved it. I laughed hysterically. I'm not a huge superhero movie guy either, but this I was like, I gotta see it. It's rated R. It seems like it's going to be different than other traditional superhero movies, and wow, it was. And I loved it from start to finish. My wife's not into superhero movies at all, but I said, after seeing it, you got to come see this movie. So I went back, saw it again. She came with me, and she loves Deadpool. It's one of her favorite movies. She watches it over and over again, and I can't wait for the third one, to come out in a year or two. So yeah, Deadpool was definitely the best movie and my favorite movie of 2016.
all right, so 2007, 17. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So John Wick 2 is an honorable mention. Just that series, I can't say enough how good that series is. This one is going to be kind of a surprise that it's an honorable mention. He probably thought it was my pick, and that's Logan. Once again, continuing with that R rating in superhero movies, I just thought they did a really good job of adapting Old Man Logan to the screen. Unfortunately, it was kind of one of those like double-edged swords. Did such a good job, but it also sort of maybe marked the ending of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So it was kind of like a bittersweet type thing. But the movie I did go with because it surprised me. Completely caught me off guard, and that was the Kingsman, the Secret Service, basically based off of the Secret Service in England. You had like a street thug, streetwise kind of kid that ends up trying out for this Secret Service, and I just thought it was an amazing, ingenious, once again over the top, somewhat original adaptation of like a Secret Service, secret agent type movie. So
for 2017, it was a complete no-brainer for me.
yeah.
The most hyped movie of all time for me. There's never been a movie that I've been more hyped to see in 2000 than 2017, and that is it. My favorite novel of all time, the miniseries. I didn't put that on this list at all, if you noticed, because being that it was a made-for-TV movie, I kind of didn't want to put it in there. But I've never wanted a remake more than it, because I felt like the miniseries, as much as I love it and the nostalgia, it didn't get to do and adapt a lot of the dark stuff the novel had. So when that first trailer came out for it, I probably watched it 500 times. That's no joke. I was so hyped. Every day I thought about this movie. I couldn't wait till September got there for it to come out. Now, did it fully live up to my expectations? No. but I still really loved it and enjoyed it, and it's by far my favorite movie of the year. Had so much fun seeing it in the theater. Went back and saw it again like 3 days later. Yeah, there's nothing that even came close that year for me. Stephen King's It, well, Andy Muschietti's It in terms of this version, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of figured that as. Now, 2018, there's a few honorable mentions, and when I get to my actual pick, I'm gonna bet that this is one that we have the same. But my first honorable mention is Upgrade. Once again, over the top action. I just
It's
thought
one I
it was,
need to see.
yeah, I just thought it was incredible. Such a solid movie, and once again, it gave you some originality. It wasn't something that we've seen before. It wasn't a remake, a reboot, a whatever. Like, it was so good. The other one that, believe it or not, whenever I saw that it was coming out, I didn't have as much. I didn't really have high expectations as you would think I would. But when I saw it, was my mind was blown, and that is the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I really wasn't that hyped to see it. I wanted to see it, but I wasn't like, I can't wait till this comes out. And then I watched it, and I remember getting to the end, and I was just like, that's exactly how I was. Just like, I was at a loss for words. Like, I didn't know. Like, I was like, wow, that they did such a good job. Like, it was incredible. And then one honorable mention that might be a lot of people didn't think too highly of this movie, but I thought it was fun from beginning to end. I thought The Rock was good in it, and that is Rampage. Whenever I heard they were making a movie based off of the old game Rampage with Lizzie, the lizard, and the gorilla, you would try to destroy the buildings. I was like, how do you adapt that? They did such a good job of creating a story to make that make sense, and it was just fun from beginning to end. And I love huge, just over-the-top creature movies, and that gave you 3 of them. But the one that I went with, which I'm sure is the same as him, I would be shocked, highly shocked if it wasn't, is A Quiet Place. So, I mean, this was one that I didn't see when it first came out. He told me, you need to watch this. It's one of the best movies. I was like, I don't know. I sat down. The main reason is because he was like, you have to pay attention. I was like, it's hard. Like, I was like, all right. So I had some free time. I watched it, and I could not stop. Mm-hmm. Like, they did such a good job of creating, like, terror, tenseness without dialogue. And, like, the acting was incredible just based on facial expressions, mannerisms, that sort of thing. Like, you literally don't realize that, like, there's really not much dialogue. It's that good. Like, I hold this as probably one of the greatest movies of all time. So, yeah, I had to be A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
For me.
For 2018, there was really only 3 movies that it could come down to. The one that I eliminated first, but it doesn't mean that it's not great. It was a contender, and that's Hereditary. Hereditary is one of the better horror movies that come out in the last handful of years. Genuinely scary. It's scarier than A Quiet Place, in my opinion, just from the final act alone. But it is a slow burn film, and it's got its ups and down moments. So I'll just go right off the bat and say yes, I did pick A Quiet Place for my favorite film of 2018, and the sequel may be my most anticipated movie for this year, 2020. But it was extremely close. And so instead of talking about A Quiet Place for a moment, because he already touched on it and I agree with everything he said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the movie that I didn't pick, that if I could do a tie, I would actually do a tie for this year. Because the other movie that deserves extreme
I wanted to do ties, but he put a ixnay because he was like, we're just going to do ties every single year. Yeah. I was like, yeah.
So the movie that was so close that edged out, which I'm surprised this guy didn't mention, and that is Ready Player One. Ready Player One blew me away. Like, that movie is so fun. I could see myself rewatching that every single year. From all of the pop culture references, the Easter eggs, and just how fun this virtual reality world is, and they're trying to find this item to basically become the most powerful person in the universe, because you'll have control over this whole reality world basically when the real world has gone to shit. The scenes in it, like, it's so masterfully crafted, and you even get into you get to go into the Overlook Hotel of The Shining that you would never think was going to be in that movie. And there's so many movie references and characters, from horror villains to comics to comedy, action movies. It's so cool, and it was really close between that and A Quiet Place, but
Yeah.
A Quiet Place, I had to pick it because it's just such an original concept, amazing acting, and nothing had me on the edge of my seat more than A Quiet Place did, and I can't wait for the sequel, like I said. So it was very close, but yes, I went with A Quiet Place.
All right. So we're on the final year.
Final year.
So this one was very, very, very hard. This was one of the hardest years for me. This was the hardest year for me outside of the nostalgic like 90s time period. So first honorable mention was Brightburn. Such an original concept of like what would happen if Superman didn't become good.
Yeah.
And they were like seeing like we've watched so many horror movies, not a lot makes us like cringe or like really gets to us. But there was a scene in this movie that I felt I like was like, oh, because of the way they shot it, it doesn't cut away, and there's a sound to it too. Yeah. Like it was just, and all around, like it wasn't like I thought they were gonna go over the top, like, but it had practical effects with CGI. Like it was a surprise movie for me. The other one, which I didn't get a lot into some of these, but this one I had to kind of give an honorable mention, and it is an animated movie. That is the Batman Hush. I brought it up in one of the other videos. It is such a good movie. Like it's a solid adaptation from that. If you've never seen it, if you like animated superhero movies, I highly recommend it. So, what made this so incredibly hard are these last two movies, The Joker and Avengers. How the hell do you pick between these two movies, being me as a huge comic book fan? It was extremely hard for me to pick because The Joker was incredible. Joaquin Phoenix killed it, the overall, and it was one that like when they first saw it, you can ask him, I was like, that's going to be a huge piece of shit. Look how the Joker looks. How are they supposed to, like, I had no expectations whatsoever, and I mean, look what it turned out to be. Granted, I think I will be honest, it gets a little more hype than I think it really needs to, but a solid movie, and at first I was like, it's got to be the Joker. That's because it's been a while since I saw my actual pick, and I couldn't pick the Joker over Avengers. I had to go with Avengers. Like I said in 2008, Iron Man was my pick. What was it? 2011, I think, was Avengers. How could I not go with the like climactic end of Avengers Endgame? Like that's what we've been building up to. It's what I've been building up to. I was so invested. Saw all the other movies multiple times. Like for me, watching that movie, there's scenes in it that I got chills. Still to this day, when I rewatch Avengers, like I get chills. When Captain America picks up, I always pronounce Thor's hammer, I still get chills. Whenever Captain America says "Avengers Assemble," chills run down my body. Like it is like gold to me. Like it is perfection. So like when I really started thinking about it, those feelings, hands down, like I had to go with that. Like so.
Yeah, for me, 2019 was the year of the movies that I was the most hyped for being disappointed, and the movies that I didn't expect much of being really good. Like Pet Sematary, I can't even tell you how hyped I was for that in 2019.
I can vouch that.
Yeah, It Chapter 2, pretty much just as much. But both of those movies ended up disappointing me, especially Pet Sematary. But then there were movies like Crawl that I thought, might be okay with killer alligators. Loved it. Ready or Not ended up being a really fun movie. Knives Out, I thought was really good time. Really fun movie to see. Even movies that I thought were going to be absolute dog shit like Escape Room actually ended up being decent. But the bigger movies for me didn't pan out. So my pick is the movie he almost picked, and that's The Joker. But for me, I had no hype to see this movie at all. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't really paying attention to the reviews, but then I did start to see everyone saying this is a must-see. There was a day I got out of work early, and I had nothing to do. I said, you know what, I guess I'll go see Joker. Why not? I'll give it a shot. And I came out of it, actually saw this guy later that day, and I said, dude, that's my movie of the year. It was that good. I thought the performance was the best performance I had seen all year. I said, I think Joaquin Phoenix deserves and should win the Academy Award this year if he gets nominated. And I loved the story. I loved how it wasn't over the top. It didn't really feel superheroish. It felt like if the Joker was in our world, what would he be like? And it was everything that I could have, hoped it would be and more. It is a dark and very depressing movie, but you get extremely emotionally invested for this character and this guy, and you keep hoping when he does have like one little moment of solace or happiness that maybe it'll build off that, but then it just keeps getting worse and worse, and the ending's like, holy crap, that final act, you just like are blown away.
Yeah.
And I just loved it all the way around. It was my movie of 2019 for sure, is The Joker. I had to pick it. I'm not real big superhero guy, so the Avengers movie, I didn't even go see it. I still need to see it, so that wasn't going to be my pick. But yeah, for me, it was Joker. If you had asked me at the beginning of the year, I would have said, oh, it's going to either be Pet Sematary or It. But no, it was Joker.
Yeah.
So that says it. I mean, we caught up. What a long ride.
Yeah.
That was by far our longest video we've ever done. We knew it was going to be a long one, but you know what? This is our first video back, and we were excited to do something. So we hope you guys stay tuned for the whole ride with us and saw where we got from the late 80s all the way till now.
And to make it a little bit easier on it, I think when we do the editing, we're going to break this video up into sections, so it's not such a... So we'll probably do 90s, 2000s, and then do 2010 to now.
Yeah, we can
just
definitely
break
do
it
that.
up because
we knew this was going to be a long one, but hopefully it was well worth it. Hopefully you guys got to enjoy it. Maybe you're listening to this in a long car ride, whatever. If you guys are willing and daring, I challenge any of you to start from the year you were born. Look up the movies of each year, and in the comments put your favorite movie of each year. If you don't want to go through all that research and work, definitely in the comments let us know if there's any years at least that you agree with our picks, or any years you just have vast difference and hate our picks. Let us know. Of course, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so as well. We are back. Now Showing is back. We've got a lot of planned content on the way. Hopefully we'll be back to having weekly content for you guys going forward. We apologize that we weren't around for a month or so, but we are back now, and hopefully this is a video to get you excited, to get things started. Yep. We had a lot of fun preparing for this video, as tough as it was. We had a lot of surprise picks. I think out of all of them, I think we only had 3 that were the same, so definitely some vast differences there. Once again, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. This is Now Showing with
John
and Cam, and we'll catch you guys on our next video.
Take care.